Mansa Musa sailed over to the shores of America in search of his half-brother Abubakari, who was Mandingo, a member of any of various peoples inhabiting a large area of the upper Niger River Valley of Western Africa. He too had become fed up with the slavery of his people by Arabs and their religion, Islam, like his brother. Abubakari, his half-brother, was the emperor of Mali. He was the grandson of one of the daughters of Sundiata. Sundiata was the founder of the Malian Empire, and he ruled for 25 years. Sundiata is also called Mari Jata, Sunjata, Sundiata, Mari Diata or Sarik Jata. Sundiata is the son of Nare Maga, his father, and Sagalan, his mother. Sundiata was born crippled, and his legs were feeble. So, his half-brother Dankaran Tuma succeeded him to the throne. One day as he became older, with the help of a blacksmith, he was able to walk. His half-brother Dankaran Tuma became jealous of Sundiata's hunting, warrior skills, and growing power, to the point that it almost caused a Fadnia, bloody competing struggle. Instead, Sundiata left Malinke and went to Merna, where he was a great warrior and was given high positions. Suanangaru Kante, king of the Susu or Soso, who were Sudanese, took over the Malinke kingdom and killed Sundiata's father and defeated Dankaran Tuma, his half-brother. Soso is an intermediate kingdom between Ghana and Mali. Sundiata was secretly summoned in by the Malinks and in 1235 AD, defeated Sumangaru Kante in the Battle of Kirini. Sundiata formed the first Malian Empire under the Keita clan, and Niani became the capital of the Malian Empire. There are 8 rulers between Nare Magan, Sundiata's father, and Namadi Kani, who is the son of Kalabi Bomba, son of Lahalachal Kalabi, grandson of Little Kalabi, son of Lalo, son of Bilali Bunama, ancestor of the Keita. The kings of Mali were of the Keita clan, who were rulers of a chiefdom on the Sankarani River. The Keita clan claims descent of Bilal Bunama, who is said to have come from Mecca to the country of Malinke, and is a descendant of Bilal ibn Rabah, the first Muad'Din, and a companion of the Prophet as Syed Mustafa Muhammad al-Amin. Ancient Ghana and Mali, by Nehemiah Lev Zion, page 55, states, the Keita claim descent of Bilali Bunama, who is said to have come from Mecca. The Keita may refer to Bilal ibn Rabah, the black companion of the Prophet and the first Muad'Din, in Islam. He became bored with Islam and its opposition to his own African culture, its racism and lack of fulfillment of truths. He referred to the muezzins as little crickets singing at sundown in the darkening savannah. Abubakari wanted to do something different, something new and something from which there was no precedence, that would keep his spirit quick and young with a lifelong excitement. He made a deal with Mansa Musa, and split the gold and riches in half, making both of them extremely rich. They had a vast empire that stretched from Tunis, Libya, Morocco, all the way over. Abubakari took half of the riches and history of his empire and sailed to the shores of America. He appointed his brother Mansa Musa as king before he left in 1311 AD. Abubakari kept in touch with the captains of the fleet by means of the talking drum. Abubakari arrived precisely 6 cycles after the disappearance of Quetzalcoatl by way of the sea from among the Toltecs in 999 AD, thus he was mistaken by the Aztec as Quetzalcoatl. His white robes fitted in with the image of the symbolic white bearded figure, while his black skin was the right ceremonial color of the rain god and wind god aspects of Quetzalcoatl. A cycle is equal to 52 years in the Aztec culture. The medieval Mexican and the Mandingo Malians have a lot in common. For example, the plumed serpent motif of ancient Mexico and the feathered serpent cult in medieval Mali. In medieval Mali, the equivalent of Quetzalcoatl is the Dasiri of the Bambara, the tribe of the Mandingo from which Abubakari came. The Dasiri is the protector of the village, the beneficent spirit whose sacred animal is a snake. The feast of the Dasiri takes place at the beginning of the year, like that of Quetzalcoatl. The Dasiri hold a dancing ceremony called the Quer or Kor, in which the dancers wrap themselves in thorns or lacerate their breasts and armpits. Some beat themselves with the long flexible scourges. And in the Quetzalcoatl ceremonial, the same self-chastisement and the use of thorn pricking occurs. In both the Mexican Quetzalcoatl and the Mandingo Dasiri worship, these thorn prickings and whippings were designed to bring blood out in drops. This blood dropping symbolized the falling of raindrops. Mansa Musa hadn't heard from his brother, so, in time he went to Mecca. He had been taking care of people all this time, spending all his money with people, and eventually he also became bored with his life. So, he said he was going to look for his brother. He made great ships to sail to America, meanwhile his brother Abubakari mixed in perfectly with the Olmecs. When Mansa Musa came into America, he brought in the names Ali and Sharufa. Then the Sephardim brought in the names El and Al. The French invasion brought in the name Bays, and the Turkish the name Diz. So Mansa Musa came to the west seeking out his brother, who had married in with the Olmecs, who at this time had already mixed in with Mongolians. They had branched off into such tribes as the Yuchi of Tennessee and the Washita or Washoe, or Wichita in Kansas, Florida, Chicago, and Massachusetts, etc. So when the Moors were brought here in the 1700s, they were called Moors. Then you have the Sudanese in the 14 and 1500s with Prince Henry of Portugal, and they were called Asiatic and Aborigine. They were already mixed before they were shipped here. Then you have your 1600 slave trade, which was really late in the 1500s and was rounded to the nearest hundred. With John Hawkins, from the west coast of Africa, they were simply called Negro. Their whole plan was to mesh them into one and stomp out the Washita, and have you all mixed with each other so that you will lose your original Olmesh and Nubian Moor identity. Then spread you around to Trinidad and other islands here in the north and have the Caucasian mix in with you. They made the Caribbean into a melting pot and mixed a lot of different people together. They then called them cannibals, from the Spanish word Caribe, Canabi from the root word Carib, meaning strong men, when that's not what they were. They were Moors and Africans mixed in from the emerging of tying into the vines, who had a lifestyle. Only the Caribs from the jungles of south were cannibals, from the mixing in with reptilians. In the islands you have the East Indians, Chinese, and Africans. They brought the Dutch into Aruba, the Scottish into Trinidad, the French into Martinique, and Guadeloupe, etc. The mixtures of East Indians and Africans are called coolies. If you research the origin of the peoples in the Caribbean, you would find that the majority of those people originated from the Arawak Native Americans, and the Carib Native Americans. Let's look into the history of some of these islands. Jamaica, members of the Arawak tribe were the original inhabitants of Jamaica who were originally called Zamaica, meaning Isles of Springs. Columbus sighted Jamaica during his second journey in 1494 AD. The Spanish set up colonies on Jamaica in 1509 AD, and ruled until 1655 AD, when it was captured by a British expedition and was formally transferred to British rule in 1670 AD. By this time, the Arawak tribes had mixed in with the Spanish and the British. However, most of them died out. As a result, African slaves were imported to overcome the labor shortage. So the Jamaicans of today are a mixture of Arawak Native Americans, Spanish, British and Moors. Haiti, the Arawak were the original inhabitants of Haiti also, and was originally called Haiti, meaning land of mountains. Columbus settled on the island shared with the Dominican Republic in 1492 AD. When an early colony was destroyed by the natives, the Spanish settled on the eastern half of the island and left the west unsettled. French privates were hunting on the west side of the island. In 1697 AD, Spain formally ceded the western, one-third of the island, to France. This portion became known as Haiti, and the east became the Dominican Republic. The French established a flourishing slave plantation system throughout the colony, and at the end of the century, it became the world's richest colony. So the Haitians and the Dominican Republicans are a mix of French, Spanish, Arawak Native Americans and Moors. By the 1800s AD, the population of Haiti was more than 450,000 slaves, 25,000 mulattoes and 30,000 French. Bahamas, the Arawaks again were the original inhabitants of the Bahamas. In 1492 AD, Columbus first landed in the Bahamas. However, the Spanish did not settle there. The first European settlers of the Bahamas were English, who settled there in the year 1648 AD, until 1717 AD. The early English settlers were repeatedly attacked by the Spanish, and finally from 1782 to 1783 AD, the Spanish did take hold of the island. However, in 1787 AD, it became a British colony. As with every European settlement in the New World, there were also Moors in bondage. So the inhabitants of the Bahamas are a mixture of Spanish, English, Arawak Native Americans and Moors. Puerto Rico, originally named Borinquen by the Taino Native Americans, was conquered by Spain in 1508 AD, by Juan Ponce de Leon. This island was originally inhabited by several Native American groups, long before it was visited by Christopher Columbus on his second voyage to the New World, 1493 AD, and renamed San Juan Bautista. It was given its present name Puerto Rico, meaning rich port, by Juan Ponce de Leon, who established a settlement inland from San Juan at Capara in 1508 AD. In 1518 AD, the Moors were bought in as slaves to work the plantations and sugar mills, which the Spaniards introduced to the island in 1511 AD. During the late 1500s, the island's strategic value was realized and other European countries tried to capture it. In 1595 AD, the Spanish defeated the English when they tried to capture Puerto Rico. However, raids from the Dutch, French and English continued for a long time. San Juan was burned during the Dutch attack in 1625 AD, and the English sacked Arecibo in 1702 AD. Puerto Rico was finally opened to foreign trade in 1804 AD, so the Puerto Ricans are a mix of the Taino Native Americans, the Spanish, the English, the Dutch and the Moors. The Taino are an Arawakan group of the Greater Antilles. They come from South America. The Taino inhabited the major portion of the island when the Spaniards arrived. About 100 years before the Spanish invasion, the Tainos were challenged by an invading South American tribe, the Caribs. They were a fierce, warlike, sadistic, and adept at using poison-tipped arrows. They raided Taino settlements for slaves, especially females, and bodies for the completion of their rites of cannibalism. Some ethnologists argue that the preeminence of the Tainos, shaken by the attacks of the Caribs, were already jeopardized by the time of the Spanish occupation. In fact, it was Caribs who fought the most effectively against the Europeans. Their behavior probably led the Europeans to unfairly attribute warlike tendencies to all of the island's tribes. A dynamic tension between the Tainos and the Caribs certainly existed when Christopher Columbus landed on Puerto Rico. He found the island populated by as many as 60,000 Taino or Arawak Indians. The Taino Native Americans who greeted Columbus made a big mistake when they showed him gold nuggets in the river and told him to take all he wanted. When the Spanish settlers first came in 1508 AD, there were about 30,000 Taino Indians. However, maltreatment, disease, flight, and unsuccessful rebellion had diminished their number to 4,000 by 1515 AD. In 1544 AD, a bishop counted only 60, but these too were soon lost. The Tainos rebelled most notably in 1511 AD, when several caciques, Native American leaders, conspired to oust the Spaniards. They were joined in this uprising by their traditional enemies, the Caribs. Their weapons, however, were no match against Spanish horses and firearms, and the revolt was soon ended brutally by the Spanish forces of Governor Juan Ponce de Leon. Trinidad, this island was originally inhabited by the Arawak and the Carib Native Americans. Discovered by Christopher Columbus in 1498 AD, Trinidad was first a Spanish colony, and then a British colony, 1797 AD. The first British settlers, 1616 AD, on Tobago were driven out by the Carib Native Americans. Subsequently, it came under the Dutch, who brought in the Moors as slaves, and French control, before the British acquired it in 1814 AD. So some of the Trinidadians today are a mixture of Carib Native Americans, Arawak Native Americans, Spanish, English, French and Dutch. Barbados was supposedly uninhabited when the Portuguese Pedro Campos landed there in the early 1500s, however he named the island Barbados meaning bearded. Now ask yourself, why would he call this island bearded? They say probably from the beard like vines or moss that hung from the trees. The British established the first permanent settlement in 1627 AD. Moors, as slaves, were brought from Africa to work the sugarcane plantations, a practice that continued until slavery was abolished in the British Empire in 1834 AD. So the inhabitants of Barbados are Moors, English and Portuguese. As you can see, the Arawaks Native Americans are very widespread in the Caribbean islands. They lived on the island of the Caribbean Sea and in the Amazon River Valley. The name Arawak is one tribe of Native Americans that is subdivided into many other tribes such as the extinct Tainos. Some of these tribes migrated as far south as southern Brazil, and others north into the West Indies and North America.